What's up, cool people? My name's Matt, aka That Random Christian Gamer. Welcome to tonight's live stream. How are we all doing, everybody? Whoop. Sorry, had my Xbox controller sitting on my lap and kind of forgot it was there, almost dropped it. Anyway, okay. So, tonight we've got some Bible study lined up. We're continuing our read through of the book of Esther. Hi, Seth. We're at chapters 7 and 8 for tonight. I came to a realization about the end of the book of Esther, but we can cross that bridge when we get to it next week. After tonight's Bible study, it is once again the first week of a new month. And so there's going to be a new mythic troop dropping in Gems of War. So I'm going to do some extra battles and stuff in that game in tonight's live stream to try and get more stuff to prep for the new mythic troop dropping. Anyway, that's the general gist of what I've got in mind for the stream tonight. Real quick, okay. I know I have heard from Seth that early access for Slay the Spire 2 is like active. It is available on Steam, $25. Yeah, a little bit expensive for being early access. Like, I do kind of understand, though, because, like, I think at least the people who would continue playing it on Steam, like... Oh, hey. Real quick, let me wrap up my thought before I address Owl there, but hi. Yeah, so, like, I guess people who buy the game in early access on Steam are just gonna keep it in its final, updated version once they're all done with the early access portion of things. But, yeah, I'm also, like, not sure if Steam is really the main place where I would want to play that game long term. So, yeah, $25 is a little expensive to just maybe buy another copy of it on a different device later, in my opinion. But anyway, Owl, hello. I am doing fairly well. Pretty much things are as usual, as they have been. Like, work is going along, little bit... I guess chaotic is probably the best word. There's a lot of stuff that's kind of in flux at work, but not like it's not like any one thing is a massive question mark. It's just a whole bunch of little things. And otherwise, I'm pretty well. First Blood, nice to see you too. Man, we got a bit of a crew here. Life is determined to life. Yeah. As some people like to say, it do be like that. Alright, Twitch ads are going to kick in here in a little bit if I don't start them myself. So let me go ahead, push a button here, and then Twitch folks, I will see on the flip side of any ads that might show up. And then we'll start the Bible study. Okay. Meanwhile, I'm going to tone down the background music just a bit more. Twitch actually notified me for a change. Ah, okay, yeah. Yeah, it's... See, that's something that I have never been real sure how reliable, notifications like that are, especially on Twitch. I don't really watch people that much on Twitch. I only ever really see going live notifications and stuff, as I myself am getting on Twitch to prep my streams. I guess while I'm watching other live streams as well, I tend to see those, but I don't really see things. I don't think I have it set to where it notifies me if I'm not on Twitch. Yeah. I guess, I do put some sort of message in Discord when I'm about to go live, but I don't really tag everybody. So maybe I should tag everybody in future going live posts in the Discord. But yeah, because I guess the message isn't really doing as much of what I want it to if I don't, put the whole at everyone in there first or somewhere in the message. But anyway, nice to see everybody. So, yeah, I guess we'll hop into Bible study here. I'll give context for what we're about to read right before I get into it. So, we're looking at Esther chapter 7 now. Recap of what's happened so far. King Xerxes needed to find a new queen, basically because of his own actions, but that's beside the point. Esther wound up being said new queen. She's a Jew. She has not told anybody at the palace she's a Jew. And then this one guy, Haman, who's like the king's right-hand man, gets mad at Esther's older cousin, Mordecai, who also works at the palace at this point. He finds out Mordecai's a Jew, and he's not satisfied with just punishing Mordecai. He hatches a plot to wipe out all the Jews across the Persian Empire. And eventually Mordecai tells Esther, basically says she's in the best position to actually, stop this plot. So she has thus far invited King Xerxes and Haman to a banquet, which is sort of a preamble for another banquet that I think they're about to get into. In between the banquets, though, Haman was going to tell the king something to basically let him kill Mordecai, but the king found out Mordecai uncovered an assassination plot earlier and was never rewarded for it. So instead of getting killed, Mordecai actually gets paraded around the city to honor him for, his basically saving the king's life. And right after that is when Haman has to go to Esther's second banquet. So that, I believe, is where we pick things up here in chapter 7. So here we go. So the king and Haman went to Queen Esther's banquet. On this second occasion, while they were drinking wine, the king again said to Esther, "Tell me what you want, Queen Esther. What is your request? I will give it to you, even if it is half the kingdom." Queen Esther replied, "If I have found favor with the king, and if it pleases the king to grant my request, I ask that my life and the lives of my people will be spared. For my people and I have been sold to those who would kill, slaughter, and annihilate us. If we had merely been sold as slaves, I could remain quiet, for that would be too trivial a matter to warrant disturbing the king." "Who would do such a thing?" King Xerxes demanded. Who would be so presumptuous as to touch you? And I'm going to pause it there real quick. You can see the next line there, but I'm not going to get to it yet. So, yeah. Unsurprisingly, I mean, this is Queen Esther's bid to save her people, the Jews. Now, there could be some difficulty with actually trying to go back on it. Go back on the plot, because it was actually like an official decree. It's sort of like, in a way that it was supposed to be so official it can't really be retracted. But, I mean, I'm sure there's some way that those can ultimately be undone. We'll see. Real quick, look at the chat. I like the name Xerxes. It's got a really unique ring to it, at least by now standards. Yeah. I guess it wasn't super unique back in those times within the Persian Empire, because I think the very next king was Artaxerxes. So, you know, also sounds like a nobody name, right? Can't really come up with what the, you know, original character's name pre-nobody would be in that case. But yeah, with the X's, definitely sounds like a Kingdom Hearts nobody character name. Anyway. But yeah. So kind of like Haman was really vague with his description of the Jews. Back when he convinced the king to agree to the decree to kill off the Jews, he never mentioned the Jews specifically. He just said that... Sorry, I'm smiling because of the chat. Haman just said, there's a certain group of people that are not obeying your commands. They're living by their own rules. I don't think that's good for the kingdom. Or empire, whatever. Anyway, so he was vague like that in convincing King Xerxes to agree to what he wanted. Esther is also likewise, perhaps intentionally in response to Haman's vagueness, if she knew about it. Otherwise, she's just being similarly crafty. She's also being vague about, you know, who her people are. I'm guessing she's smart enough to know that if she has seen this much favor from the king, you know, in order to be chosen as queen in the first place, and then also to, you know, be spared her life for sort of just entering the throne room unannounced, you know, he chose to spare her in that moment. And so, anyway, she, I'm guessing, has an idea that the king would want to save her life if he knew it was in danger. And, like, kind of in line with that thought, King Xerxes is like, who would do such a thing? How dare someone be so bold as to want to lay hands on my queen? Well, little does he know that she's essentially talking about Haman and his plot to kill all the Jews. Because she has not told anybody in the palace that she is a Jew. So yeah, then we get to, I guess, Esther's response to the question, her answer in verse 6 here. You know, the question of who would do such a thing from King Xerxes. Esther replied, "This wicked Haman is our adversary and our enemy." Haman grew pale with fright before the king and queen. Then the king jumped to his feet in a rage and went out into the palace garden. Haman, however, stayed behind to plead for his life with Queen Esther, for he knew that the king intended to kill him. In despair, he fell on the couch where Queen Esther was reclining, just as the king was returning from the palace garden. The king exclaimed, "Will he even assault the queen right here in the palace before my very eyes?" And as soon as the king spoke, his attendants covered Haman's face, signaling his doom. Yeah, So, I mean, I'm not surprised Haman's pleading for his life, but this is like biblical soap opera going on here, because Haman is not in the moment trying to actually harm Queen Esther, and yet, because he is essentially like falling to his knees or whatever, like he's, I guess, seemingly collapsing either upon or very near Esther, trying to plead for his life. And of course the king comes back into the room at that exact moment and is like, "Really? You're gonna try and do this now?" And that just kind of, even though that wasn't what Haman actually intended, it sort of served as proof in the king's eyes that Haman wanted to kill Esther. So, yeah, Haman's in trouble. But seriously, that's like such a soap opera kind of thing to happen with the timing of those events. So yeah, well, let the soap opera continue. Verse 9. Then Harbona, one of the king's eunuchs, said, "Haman has set up a sharpened pole that stands 75 feet tall in his own courtyard. He intended to use it to impale Mordecai, the man who saved the king from assassination." "Then impale Haman on it," the king ordered. So they impaled Haman on the pole he had set up for Mordecai, and the king's anger subsided. So, in just sheer poetic justice, the thing that Haman had set up, I guess, probably the night before, as something to kill Mordecai with, instead, Haman himself ends up being the one it's used on. Yeah. I still am like, okay, where are they doing this from? To, like, first off, how did you get the pole to be 75 flipping feet? That is a tall pole. And, like, I think, if I remember right, he intended to, like, kind of push Mordecai off of the top of some building, or maybe that was just me reading into the situation because of how tall the pole is. But anyway, yeah. But however they intended to do it, they did it all right. I will say, though, I might have to look into some other translations at some point, because I think I've mentioned I think I've heard other people mention that it was like a noose kind of situation set up, or maybe they just weren't remembering it correctly. I don't know. The note here just mentions that Hebrew says the pole was 50 cubits. Yay, conversions. In fact, you know what? I'm going to go a little bit off my normal script and look at a slightly different translation to see if that mentions, a sharpened pole or some sort of noose or gallows or something like that. So let's try the NIV. See what that says real quick. Pole reaching to the height of 50 cubits stands by Haman's house. Okay, but that says impale him on it. You're not going to impale somebody on a gallows or a noose. Interesting. And now, just for really sheer curiosity, King James Version. And I'm realizing this is old school King James Version, not even new King James, but anyway. Behold, also... See, okay, King James says gallows. So, maybe that's where people get that idea from. I'd have to look at more translations to land for sure on whether it seems like it should be rendered as pole or gallows, especially since I don't know Hebrew enough to be able to look into that. But anyway, sorry, that was a bit of a tangent, but I was curious in the moment, and this recording is going to be kind of short otherwise. It still is kind of short, but anyway, yeah. So the thing that Haman had set up to kill Mordecai with, he gets killed on it instead, and after Haman's dead, King is able to settle down, probably because then there's seemingly no immediate threat, at least, to Queen Esther. But saving the lives of all the Jews might be a little more complicated still. It doesn't seem like we're getting into the nitty-gritty of that just yet. Maybe we'll get to that in the next chapter. But that's all for Esther chapter 7. Okay. Real quick, get myself a drink. A little sip of water there. I unintentionally got really kind of into that whole thing. Describing all that. It's very soap opera like, rather kind of one of the more overall like thrilling stories in the Bible to an extent. Okay. Next chapter. So now we're at Esther chapter 8. So Haman's plot to kill the Jews might be thwarted. At least he himself won't be part of it, because he's dead. Queen Esther had her banquet with Haman and the king, and in a somewhat crafty way, basically told the king that Haman intended to kill her and her people. She didn't really say who her people were, but included herself, because, I mean, that is honest. She's a Jew. Haman intended to kill all the Jews, or at least have all the Jews killed. So, of course, the king doesn't want his queen even harmed, never mind killed. So, once Esther winds up sort of, I don't know if cornering is quite the best wording, but, you know, she sort of pinned this effort on Haman, which it was his idea. And like the king sort of in the moment, because of other circumstances that made it look like Haman wanted to kill Esther right then, the king has Haman killed, like, right then. Specifically on something that Haman had set up to try and kill Esther's older cousin Mordecai. But Haman's dead, but it wasn't said outright that the whole decree to kill the Jews has been undone yet. Let's see what else happens in chapter 8 here. On that same day, King Xerxes gave the property of Haman, the enemy of the Jews, to Queen Esther. Then Mordecai was brought before the king, for Esther had told the king how they were related. The king took off his signet ring, which he had taken back from Haman, and gave it to Mordecai. And Esther appointed Mordecai to be in charge of Haman's property. Then Esther went, you know what? I'll pause there for a sec, actually. So, long story short there, all of Haman's stuff is now Mordecai's. Because Haman's dead, and I guess Esther has now told King Xerxes how she and Mordecai are related. And of course, the king likes his queen, who he hand chose. So, possibly because of that connection alone, but also, like, you know, the previous knowledge of Mordecai saving him from an assassination attempt, like, both of those might have played a part in... Actually, it doesn't outright say that the king pretty much puts Mordecai in Haman's old position. But he did give him the signet ring, which is a pretty big deal. So, I think Mordecai has, at the very least, gotten a promotion here. Also, Esther has basically said that Haman's stuff is now Mordecai's. It was given to her, but she's essentially giving it to Mordecai. I mean, it says she put Mordecai in charge of it. And I'm imagining with their relationship, he's probably going to have pretty easy permission to use it if he wants. Anyway, on to verse 3. Then Esther went again before the king, falling down at his feet and begging him with tears to stop the evil plot devised by Haman the Agagite against the Jews. Again the king held out the gold scepter to Esther, so she rose and stood before him. So, again, she's kind of like going into the throne room uninvited. But if it was like the previous situation, he apparently wasn't prone to inviting her to his throne very often. So she takes a risk once again to enter the throne room in such a way. Although, like, if it worked out the previous time, it's not too surprising that she would be fine this time around. Not that it would have been safe to assume that, but it probably seemed more likely that he would, you know, be okay with it. Also, Agagite is kind of awkward to say quickly. Anyway, tangent done. Verse 5. Esther said, "If it please the king, and if I have found favor with him, and if he thinks it is right, and if I am pleasing to him, let there be a decree that reverses the orders of Haman, son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, who ordered that Jews throughout all the king's provinces should be destroyed. For how can I endure to see my people and my family slaughtered and destroyed?" Then King Xerxes said to Queen Esther and Mordecai the Jew, I have given Esther the property of Haman, and he has been impaled on a pole because he tried to destroy the Jews. Now go ahead and send a message to the Jews in the king's name, telling them whatever you want, and seal it with the king's signet ring. But remember that whatever has already been written in the king's name and sealed with his signet ring can never be revoked. See, that's where it's a little complicated. He can't take back the previous decree because of the way in which it was made. But a new decree can be issued that can diminish the impact of the previous one. We'll get to how they try and figure this out in a little bit here, but I also find it interesting just the series of ifs. If it please the king, and if I have found favor, if he thinks it's right, and if I'm like... I guess that's just her way of, like, really trying to appeal to King Xerxes and kind of being like, all right, if any one of these things is true, we should do this thing. So, and, like... You would hope that at the very least, you know, she has found favor with him. And or that she is considered pleasing in his sight. Or in his eyes. Might be the better way of saying that. I mean, he's already shown favor towards her a few times. But again, like... They can't undo the previous decree. They can only make another one to sort of combat it. And to that end, though, Xerxes is pretty much giving Esther and Mordecai free reign to come up with whatever idea that they can that would either make the previous thing not happen at all, or at least, like, severely minimize its impact. And again, so he's... I mean, he gave Mordecai the signet ring already, so whatever decree or message or whatever that Esther and Mordecai come up with is essentially going to be just as official and irrevocable as the previous decree. Anyway, okay. On to verse 9. So on June 25th, the king's secretaries were summoned, and a decree was written exactly as Mordecai dictated. It was sent to the Jews and to the highest officers, the governors, and the nobles of all the 127 provinces stretching from India to Ethiopia. The decree was written in the scripts and languages of all the peoples of the empire, including that of the Jews. The decree was written in the name of King Xerxes and sealed with the king's signet ring. Mordecai sent the dispatches by swift messengers who rode fast horses especially bred for the king's service. The king's decree gave the Jews in every city authority to unite to defend their lives. They were allowed to kill, slaughter, and annihilate anyone of any nationality or province who might attack them or their children and wives, and to take the property of their enemies. The day chosen for this event throughout all the provinces of King Xerxes was March 7th of the next year. Okay, so again, they can undo the thing that said to kill the Jews on March 7th. But they're... I guess they being Esther and Mordecai, I guess their idea is, well, rather than have the Jews be like all spread out and somewhat isolated from each other, and, you know, have it be more difficult for them to defend themselves, let's, you know, have them gather together, because, you know, they can fend off the attackers better when they're united than they can separately. And I guess if they hadn't done that, if this decree hadn't been made, I guess, like, there could have been some almost more legal ramifications if the Jews tried to defend themselves in this way. I'm not real sure about that, but it's like, I almost imagine they would have tried to unite and defend themselves anyway. I guess in this case, there's one, less reason for them to be afraid to do so. Two, like, because that it will be known to all the other people throughout the empire as well, they might become then less inclined to try and kill the Jews, because it's like, well, now this isn't going to be just like a one-on-one or two-on-one, you know, advantage kind of situation for the attackers. This is now, okay, many multiple defenders we have to contend with. Okay, looking at notes here. The Hebrew for this note in verse 9 says, on the 23rd day of the third month of Sivan of the ancient Hebrew lunar calendar. This day was June 25th, 474 BC. So there was still the majority of a year before, you know, the chosen date for the killing of the Jews, but then also now the Jews defending themselves. Which means that other stuff with, you know, Esther's banquets and Haman being killed and Mordecai basically being promoted, all that seems like it happened within a couple months. I'm blanking on the date that it mentioned at first. You know what? Let me actually venture on back to chapter 3 here. Okay, so it was in April when Haman's decree was made. So yeah, literally like 2 months later is when this is happening. Yeah. So, a bunch of stuff happened in a pretty short amount of time. At least as it pertains to this particular story. Anyway, another note here. Hebrew there says Cush instead of Ethiopia. And I'm guessing that's an old name for the region that's now Ethiopia. Or at least part of it. Also, I guess, this whole thing, this decree of Mordecai is essentially also, I mean, if I'm reading this right, it's giving the Jews permission to take the property of their enemies. They might not know who's going to be an enemy necessarily until somebody tries to attack. they might even, you know, I guess maybe that's just supposed to apply to whatever attackers they end up killing in their efforts to defend themselves. Because, I mean, those possessions got to go somewhere. I think otherwise it would probably just go to, you know, the families of said attackers. But I digress. Note there... Okay, this is just related to the March 7th date that it mentions. Hebrew says the 13th day of the 12th month, the month of Adar. The date selected was March 7th, 473 BC. Also see the note in chapter 2, verse 16. Okay, I thought that was back in chapter 3, but whatever. Anyway, on to verse 13. Let's see what else comes of this decree here. A copy of this decree was to be issued as law in every province and proclaimed to all peoples, so that the Jews would be ready to take revenge on their enemies on the appointed day. So, urged on by the king's command, the messengers rode out swiftly on fast horses bred for the king's service. The same decree was also proclaimed in the fortress of Susa. Then Mordecai left the king's presence, wearing the royal robe of blue and white, the great crown of gold, and an outer cloak of fine linen and purple. And the people of Susa celebrated the new decree. The Jews were filled with joy and gladness, and were honored everywhere. In every province and city, wherever the king's decree arrived, the Jews rejoiced, and had a great celebration, and declared a public festival and holiday. And many of the people of the land became Jews themselves, for they feared what the Jews might do to them. That's an interesting situation for someone's conversion. That just makes me wonder then how closely these new converts actually followed Jewish practices. But, okay, we still haven't actually gotten to that day yet, though. But, given this reaction, especially the part of many people in the land became Jews themselves, like, I gotta think that the attacks were... that the attacks ended up being quite small against the Jews. But I guess, you know, the importance of the messengers riding out swiftly and all that, well, one, it's kind of important to note because of the size of the empire we're dealing with and the means of travel. That way there was, you know, time to actually travel all that distance to share these decrees. And also, again, it like kind of reflects what happened with Haman's decree and is then similarly sort of like countering it. Because when Haman's decree went out, it went out on swift horses, and like, same kind of method of delivery. So, now I'm not 100% sure on this, but as one last thought, I think I recall hearing somebody mention at some point, I can't say for sure who or when, but I think I remember hearing somebody, at least within the past couple of years, I would think, mention that they, like, this whole holiday thing that was set up actually, you know, became a pretty significant regular tradition for the Jews. In fact, it might be... one of the ones that that people in the modern day still notably celebrate. I couldn't tell you offhand which holiday that is. But maybe somebody who knows can, like, leave a comment or something. In any case, yeah. Pretty big deal throughout the empire that you know, because essentially all the Jews with this decree, or maybe not all of them, but like a lot of them were likely saved from being completely wiped out. And they don't necessarily have to, like, try and flee somewhere else. That could have been quite difficult, because this was a very large empire. So, yeah. Rejoicing in celebration at, official decree from Mordecai in the king's name. Pretty much saying that, yep, these attacks may come, but you all have official permission to stand united against whoever would attack you. And whoever you kill, you essentially get their stuff as well. And I guess maybe that was added in a way to, like, sort of show displeasure towards whoever might attempt that. Because, like, normally, now I'm getting off on another detail tangent here, but might be relevant to know. Generally speaking, somebody dies, and then their belongings just go to somebody in their family. No big deal. That's kind of how things work nowadays, too. A lot of the time. But in cases where, like we saw at the beginning of the chapter, like, King Xerxes gave Haman's property specifically to Esther because he was displeased with Haman and the idea that he would try to kill Esther. And I guess it was not only showing displeasure towards Haman, but also showing favor towards Esther. So maybe it's not so much a displeasure with the attackers, but a favor towards the Jews, that it's mentioned in Mordecai's decree that they can take the possessions of whoever they might kill in, this whole attack on the Jews that may or may not even really happen now. So I guess everybody knowing that, and knowing there's, these different consequences and motivations going into the whole situation, it definitely, I think, puts some... trying to think of how to word it. It could definitely, dissuade some people from attacking the Jews anymore. And clearly it did, because it says there were a lot of Jews, a lot of people who became Jews as a result of this. Anyway, that's all I got for Esther chapter 8. Owl, thanks for the sub. 2 months in a row now. Given my, I'm pretty sure admittedly smaller following and viewership, support, especially of that kind, is greatly appreciated. And thank you for being a good friend, too. First one who was gifted the... Ah, okay. Well, I guess follow-up thanks to whoever gifted the first sub. But yeah, this one's from you. Thanks, Al. Appreciate the support. Appreciate your involvement in our... I feel like the term online community is kind of used so much it feels almost like a cliche to say it, but I don't really have a better term, so thanks, seriously, for all of your involvement in the things I do here. Anyway, okay. Bible study is done for the evening. I could run ads while I change things over to video games. I guess I might as well, because otherwise everybody's watching the transition that I can otherwise spare you from seeing. Because I doubt that's especially interesting. Although, with a bunch of time to spare, Seth's coming in with some random exercise. Or do that. Yeah, I might as well do that now. There's some time to spare. Okay, dag. Friendly reminder that as of a couple of weeks ago, one of the exercises in the rotation got swapped out. If you would like... If you would like to make a suggestion for an exercise to add to my list, or just swap one out with an alternate list that I have, there is now a channel redemption for that. Oh, by the way, Owl, I don't think you were here back a couple of Saturdays ago. You know, wow, why am I blanking on what I called the stream? I guess I just called it Super Random Saturday. Anyway, I called it Super Random then, but it's not so random now, I guess, that I have re-enabled some of the old point redemption things, as far as like changing different lights and stuff. I know I disabled those for a while because, you know, I was attempting to have things look a little more professional streamer, air quote. But, what's looking like a pro compared to, you know, having a community with more possible ways to interact? I mean, y'all may or may not even take advantage of those. It's there for if and when you do. Anyway, random exercise to figure out here. Okay, here we go. I have rolled a 6 for the exercise, which means yippee burpees. And there's like some kind of thread in here. Anyway, second roll is a 5. The floor light behind me right now, I think, is set to purple. There's a pink that I'm sure is definitely more clearly a pink than that. I mean, if I can get it to work from this distance. Okay, well, we're changing it to yellow. Now, sorry, okay, let me finish up figuring out the exercise here real quick. Okay, burpees. Oh, geez, I rolled a 5 for... I am not going to do 30 burpees, but I rolled a 5 and a 6. Well, I will do as many as I can. Let's just put it at that. All right. Changing the light to yellow. I might need to actually get closer to it to make it work. Plus, I need to get out of the chair anyway for the exercise. Alright, so... that is about the yellowest yellow I have. I've also got just a slightly more orange yellow. Take your pick out of those two, if you can even tell the difference. So we got this one, or that one. Can you, like... Okay. So this one. Okay, well, there we have it. Light has been set to yellow. And exercise time now. Oh, man. Yeah, we'll see how this goes. If I'm being totally transparent, my lower back has kind of felt a little sore since yesterday. I'm not quite sure what the heck I did to it, but... Anyway. Alrighty. Let's try stretching out the back a little bit first before I exercise then. Ugh. I don't know how much that'll really help, but... Okay, exercise. Here we go. And... 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I guess I should try to at least keep it to some multiple of 5 though, since I rolled that set modifier. I don't know. Anyway. 6. 7. 8. 9. Yeah. 10. Jeez. Even another 5 would be a bit of a push for me, but... I guess I did say I would do as many as I can. So... 11. I'm just trying to make sure I don't forget to, like, actually do the bit of a jump to it at the end. Otherwise, I'm not sure it really counts. Okay. Anywho. 12. 13. 14. Yeah, form is definitely getting a little sloppy here, but oh well. Okay. Ain't no way I'm doing 5 more. I think I'll stop it there. Whew. Yeah, okay. Admittedly, this is one of those times where I feel a little out of shape, but these things happen when you don't necessarily, like, prioritize exercising all the time. Or exercising often, I should say. Anyway, okay. Can I get some more water here? Okay. Yeah, sure, we're close enough. I'll run the next ad break. And then hop into some Gems of War. So, Twitch folks, I'll see y'all in a bit. Meanwhile, gotta change the stream category on Twitch. YouTube has kind of said this whole time, because YouTube's a little weird with like changing that kind of stuff. I think it just kind of ultimately goes with whatever you set it to at the end anyway, and labels the entire stream as that. Maybe Twitch does too, I don't know, but like YouTube keeps its archives forever, for all I can tell. But anyway, okay. Do set myself up to play Gems of War. Okay. Game has its own music, so I'm getting rid of mine that I had in the stream. Real quick, just gonna get into something. Nope, I thought for sure it would renew treasure stuff today, or this hour. Alright, so I know sometimes we end up kind of randomizing different things, whether it's the type of event that I do, or the path through the Underspire, or different things like that. I think this time I'd like to just keep it plain and simple. I'll just do the stuff and do as much of it as I can. Now I have throughout the week intentionally been spending 50 gems per day to get extra torches for the Underspire, but I've also used a bunch already. I wanted to try and see kind of how far I could get specifically within the Underspire. And yet, turns out maybe not as far as I was hoping. Because I was kind of hoping I'll be able to get, I don't know, like 4 or 5, you know, different keystone things and the corresponding rewards and whatnot. That does not seem to be happening. But, I don't know. I mean, I've gotten 2 so far and done a fair bit after the second gate already. So who knows? I have encountered a decent number of rooms that have given some kind of extra rewards, though. Nothing really as substantial as most of the, you know, keystone dragon battles and stuff. But still more than just the normal battles. I should have known that thing wouldn't die right then. Oh well. So, if it wasn't obvious enough, the proverbial floor is completely open as far as discussion and things like that. I'm not going to plant any particular seeds for anything that may be discussed, because I'd rather focus on whatever you all want to talk about. And because if I drive the topic, it could very easily get to something controversial, given what's going on in, current events and whatnot. It's just because that's current events. Not because I would try to make it controversial specifically, but just because my mind would be geared towards current events then. We could discuss Slay the Spire 2 being released in early access as one thing. Now, I know for sure Seth has seen, I imagine possibly others even currently watching have seen me play some Slay the Spire, the first one. I definitely enjoyed it for the most part. I admittedly find it a struggle to get to, higher ascensions. Which means then I'm maybe not up on all of the lore and secrets for the game. So, I don't know if that would leave me necessarily in a position, sort of like if I were going into Kingdom Hearts 2 without playing Chain of Memories or something like that, where, there's a game series and you miss part of it that, definitely has some related story elements. But I guess the thing with Kingdom Hearts 2 is you didn't need absolutely to know what happened in Chain of Memories. As long as you played the first game, you could pretty well understand the vast majority of what was going on in Kingdom Hearts 2. It's just knowing the events of Chain of Memories added some depth to that. Well, okay. Didn't necessarily want to see that. I mean, I'll eventually go back to that room probably to get rewards from it, but right now I'm trying to get through as many gates as I can. Anything that actually mattered in Chain of Memories you were told in Kingdom Hearts 2. Well, yeah, anything that was really important to the plot of 2. Yeah, I agree. Now, I mean, as far as the fates of some of Organization 13, I don't recall necessarily how well that was explained. See, it's hard for me to say for sure, actually, because, I played the original Chain of Memories before playing Kingdom Hearts 2. So, I had that knowledge going in. So, I don't know. Am I really in a position to say that, am I really in a position to play, to say such things about that series, having experienced the actual sequence of events and having the knowledge thereof? Anyway, Al says, play a bunch of new games lately. How familiar are you with Dragon Quest series? I admittedly haven't played any Dragon Quest games, but like, it's definitely a familiar franchise name. Like, I know it's a well-known series, and I know it's like fantasy RPG type stuff. Pretty sure there's a couple of references in other franchises to even just specifically like the slime from Dragon Quest. But Al, I know, at least I seem to recall, last time you mentioned playing a new game, you did mention a Dragon Quest game. Forget which one it was, though. Dragon Quest VII is favorite in the series. Played the remake that came out recently and did not appreciate it at all. Oh, really? So, what was so different about it, if I might ask? Is that the one that I've been seeing lately where the changing graphics made the characters, just like all the characters in general, made them look like it was meant for kids? Interesting. Okay, well, I found the next gate, but I still need to find the keystone, and I think this is the only path that I haven't traveled past the green gate. Yeah. Okay. Absolutely butchered everything. Chopped up the story, changed the sequence of events to a point where it made absolutely no sense. Plays like, here's Dragon Quest VII for people who hate Dragon Quest VII. Yeah. I'm sorry to hear that it was such a disappointment and that you spent your money on that. Definitely sucks feeling like you wasted money on something. Alright, my chair keeps wanting to slide back a little bit, so I'm gonna shift myself over this way even further. Because I played the original, I know all the context they cut out. But to new players, that would be so... Yeah. Huh. So, yeah, it's like, I get that sometimes with remakes, they, you know, want sort of a fresh angle on what they're remaking. But at the same time, you gotta know with a remake that people are gonna want something that at least kind of resembles what you're remaking. Anyway, also bought the remake of Dragon Quest 1 and 2. Never played the originals. Didn't care for 1 because it just hadn't found the voice of the series yet. Dragon Quest 2 is so good. Definitely a good game. Although, now I do wonder if people who played the original Dragon Quest II have a similar view of it to what you do for the remake of 7. Crying about there being too much story. Like, yeah. Yeah, I never will understand people disliking a game having a lot of story. Like, if you want a game without story, play freaking Call of Duty or FIFA or something like that that gets churned out on a yearly basis with no originality. I actually looked it up, and this bundle for 1 and 2 is highly acclaimed. Fans of the, okay. So it seemingly, like, the rest of the fandom for that bundle does not have the... They don't have the same feelings toward that bundle that you've noted they have towards the remake of number 7 specifically. Okay, real quick, speaking of game remakes, though, I remember seeing that, you know, the Final Fantasy VII remake parts are supposed to be, you know, multi-platform soon if they aren't already. Not entirely sure if I'll feel like paying for the cost of 3 games to get what was 1 and more, maybe. I don't know how much more content they might have added for the remakes. But anyway, the whole point of Dragon Quest is you go on the journey. Each town or kingdom has its own story, and you get the story of it. As all these isolated events stack up to form the overarching plot, you as the hero go on. Yeah. So, would you say that it's like sort of episodic in a way? Like, within the game, each sort of town or whatever is sort of its own miniature mission or episode? Okay. But yeah, again, I shouldn't necessarily say too much about the FF7 remake, soon-to-be trilogy, because, for all I know, it might actually be... There might actually be that much to it that it is, in fact, worth buying 3 separate games. Or, I gotta imagine, somewhere down the line, there's gonna be some sort of a bundle with all 3, and it won't cost as much as buying each one individually. But of course, this is me speaking to that as a Kingdom Hearts fan, who has bundles for a bunch of the games. So, like, although that's the thing with the whole of Final Fantasy as a franchise. So many of the different entries don't actually have connected stories to each other. So, it makes... It would be less significant to bundle them because of that. Dragon Quest 9, there's this town called Coffinwell, where the whole town is caught. It's disease that makes them cough and deteriorate until... Okay. Turns out in a tomb, a recent earthquake caused a magical... Okay. Interesting. As it goes on, you realize the earthquake is like the one that sent you crashing down to Earth. So, but then the way you're explaining it, to my understanding, is then there are other towns in Dragon Quest IX that have their own, like, subplots. But then the broader story might have the earthquake as a connecting point through all of them, or I'm not sure, but... then by the end, it turns out the main villain blasted all his hate and shook the whole world. You don't find this out until near the end. Then you realize his hate caused all these issues to spread through all the towns. Okay, so, yeah. But each other town, I'm guessing, has its own problem that it's experiencing as a result of what this villain did. Yeah, they do all have their own unique issue, and none of them reference each other. Oh, man, sorry. I mean, can't really help the fact that I'm yawning, but sorry anyway. Okay, I've made it past the blue gate now. And I think in most of my other journeys through the Underspire, I haven't gotten too much beyond there. Yeah, now tomorrow I think I'll get at least another 5 torches, if not 7 automatically. And then of course I can pay another 50 gems to get 5 more torches on top of that. I am a little surprised that, so the past few times that I've done the Underspire to any decent length, I have at least at some point stumbled upon what I'm just going to call like a warp room. Or a tunnel room, maybe, would be more, I don't know. But basically, a room that will just like take you further ahead to a certain spot. Likely past another gate or two without having to actually like get the keystones to go through those gates the normal way. Point of Dragon Quest 7 is that Esther is the only island in the entire world It's just vast, empty, lifeless ocean out there. It's a shrine where, if you find the fragments of stone tablets, you use them to go back in time to each of the lost islands to prevent the Demon Lord from doing what he did to seal it away and restore the world. But each monster that sealed the island is a minion of the Demon Lord. Yeah. So basically, then in number 7, you're making it so that there's more islands that actually, you know, get to survive. It's only until you're like 3/4 of the way into the plot when the Demon Lord's name gets regularly mentioned. Okay, so I guess until that point you're just going around to the different islands and fighting the monsters that sealed them without the characters necessarily tying it all together, connecting it with this Demon Lord. Once you fix the issue and come back to the present, you can go to the island and see how it has prospered or changed since when you saved it. Man. Alright, I'm gonna be real with y'all. This is gonna be one of those nights where I'm extra glad that I'm, like, keeping the streams to 2 hours now. I have not gotten the most sleep throughout this week, let's just say that. Okay, see, now some of these rooms I can approach and I don't even have to battle anything, I just get stuff. So yeah, there's definitely been some changes to the Underspire over time. You restore the Almighty's champions, sort of Mervyn, to life. He tells you that it's the Demon Lord. So after you have him on the team, you know who the real villain is. I almost just because of different monsters, in this case sealing stuff, but different monsters related to different areas that are all connected to the actual, like, main villain, kind of had me thinking of Digimon Survive for a sec. When you're doing the true end. See, now there's also a game series where, to some effect, you don't necessarily, like, block off access to any of these regions necessarily, but in a way, the plot of Record of Agarest War kind of almost is doing the opposite of what you're describing as Dragon Quest VII's plot, where you're, like, intentionally going around to these, like, different continents and sealing these different, I think they're pillars or so. Anyway, sealing these different areas with different generations of your main hero in order to actually, like, protect the planet then. I played 2 games out of, well, I know of 3 games in that specific series. I only played 2 because sadly it seems the third one was PlayStation exclusive. In a console generation that, you know, I had already started playing on Xbox. It's actually a valid comparison. In Dragon Quest XI, the villain actually wins 1/3 into the game and turns the world into a desolate and hellish place. It's only after the end of this arc you get to go back and splinter off the timeline to prevent the bad future from happening. But he still manages to have his minion enter the new timeline. Yeah, since I mentioned Record of Agarest War, I guess I would just say, I mean, I kind of liked the story. It was a little bit easy to lose it amongst certain amounts of the combat. But I'd say if you like... Okay, well, if you like games where the battle system is kind of Fire Emblem-like, you know, where it's turn-based strategy on like a grid thing. So if you like that kind of battle system, you like story-driven fantasy games with maybe a bit, and I'm underselling the extent of it, but with a sprinkling, or more than just a sprinkling, let's say, a bit of dating sim kind of mixed in. There's kind of a poorly described Record of Agarest War for you. Dragon Quest is just your basic turn-based JRPG. I don't play it for the combat or gameplay, just the story lore. Okay. Yeah. I've had some thoughts here and there about actually maybe playing Record of Agarest War, you know, doing a public playthrough, but it's the more to keep, I mean, calling it dating sim like is almost a PG comparison, but those kinds of aspects of it are a big reason why I have hesitated to do so. I mean, it's a rated teen game, but yeah. Also, it's a game that... Actually, that might be a better one to just... Well, if I still had a bunch of time to do stream-exclusive games on the channel, I would say maybe that's a better off... Maybe that's better as a stream-exclusive kind of game, because, yeah. You can also have different moral alignments and stuff in the game, and so there's some differences in what could happen through multiple playthroughs to an extent. So that part of it is slightly comparable to Digimon Survive, I guess. but it has been a while. I honestly would have to double check that those games, because those games were, I forget if they were when I had the 360 or the Xbox One, but either way, definitely a previous console generation. I'm not even going to guarantee that those discs would work on my Series X here. Even if it's noticing things with new eyes. Sorry. Sounds interesting. Do like replayability of games. Even if it's noticing things with new eyes that I didn't notice before. Well, I'm gonna have to start making a list of all the game ideas and recommendations. Because now it's like, okay, well, there's... Well, I have to play through Hades 1 still before I even contemplate doing Hades 2, personally, at least for my own sake. Especially now that I started playing Hades 1 a little bit. But then it's like, okay, well, Record of Agarest War, maybe if that works. Somebody else recommended this game called Bug Fables, which has some sort of like Paper Mario-ish vibes to it. Yeah. Really just makes me wish I had more time to play them all. Curse the competing desire to actually have somewhat of a social life. And Slay the Spire 2. I'm still wondering if I might wait for the full, like, not early access release of Slay the Spire 2. Thought of doing a random variety week once a month where you change it up and play a whole bunch of different games. You're not... Yeah, well... Again, I think the issue is just that, like... Well... I guess if I was okay with interrupting whatever series I happen to be in the middle of to do that, I could maybe do something of that sort. But also, like, I would, in order to keep up with my edited video schedule, that would have to be either an entirely extra stream, or I would have to turn that stream into, like, basically first impressions and or game reviews of a sort. Meanwhile, realistically, if I just straight up had more time, there would be pretty much no debate in my mind that I could pretty much tack that on as something extra, even if just like once a month. Maybe not even necessarily take a whole week once a month, but just do like one extra stream per month where it's that kind of stuff. Also, the fact that multiple of the games mentioned I don't even currently own and would have to buy. The idea of just buying every single game that's recommended, I don't know if that's very practical. Because that would leave me spending a bunch of money on a backlog I may or may not even get through. Yeah. It's also embracing the randomness because no one knows what the game will be except... Yeah. All we gotta do is get you to full time. Yeah. All you have to do. If you want to see me play a random variety of games, make sure to follow all my different channels and social media pages and share with other people. Get them to, you know, support, subscribe, do all the things. I mean, also, to that end, though, if y'all just want to, like, put on my entire library of YouTube videos in the background while you're doing stuff, because that's basically, now that I'm past 500 YouTube subscribers, I just need to hit the watch time mark before I get that at least, like, partial monetization benchmark. I mean, it is a lot of watch hours that I need, admittedly. Like, I think I only have a third at best, maybe more like a quarter of what I would need to hit that point.
Mana surge.
And I think at that point, then YouTube basically allows you to have, well, some of the kinds of things that Twitch sort of automatically has built in, where there's, like, you know, stickers or special things that, you know, people who, like, join your channel as a member then can get access to. It almost strikes me kind of as a fusion of, like, the sort of Twitch sub benefits that people might typically get, and also maybe a bit of, like, just other supporter page-ish stuff, you know, similar to more of, like, a Patreon or, like, that kind of supporter page, I mean. Alright, admittedly these traps in this battle are starting to cause me some slight issues. Okay, are you... Yep, you're ready to cast your thing. That's not enough to get rid of that one. I will at least do this to get rid of the first one. And of course, then there's a bunch of matches to give them extra moves and fill their mana and all that. Yeah. But, like, for real though, if any of y'all saw, I don't know, a couple years back or whatever it was it even a couple of years? I don't know. Back when I did my, like, you know, full-time streamer preview week, like, that would be every week if I could just be full-time in, you know, streaming and content creation. I would have live streams nearly every day, and probably more edits on the schedule, and all kinds of stuff like that. What did I get? Okay. Completed that campaign task, alright. I think next I would like to do this class trial thing, because that is only available today, really. And the class in question is not fully leveled up yet. Yeah, and I think even in that full-time preview weekend, or not weekend, week, when I was acting for 1 week like I would were I streaming full-time, I think I even had a day where it was just like, okay, I'm just gonna randomly go through my library of games, and whatever game happens to randomly get selected, I'm gonna try that one out. And then, you know, maybe play each one for like an hour or so, and then try out something different. So pretty much like what Owl was describing in a way. Didn't you pick one of the games? Maybe? Trying to remember what all games I even played for that. I know one of them was Hydrophobia, I think it was called. I'm not sure if that's the one that you picked, though. I thought I recalled maybe for the most part just kind of randomizing all that, but I wouldn't put it beyond myself to have let some people pick as well. And there was some other shooter game that I played at some point that day. I don't remember what it was. Just remember you scrolled down your whole game library and I picked one. Okay. And of course, because I have a different console now, my game library looks a little bit different. A bunch of the games that I had downloaded onto the old external hard drive. Actually, I don't know. I remember being told that I would basically have to get a new external hard drive to work with the Series X. Like, the one that I had for my Xbox One wouldn't work for it, or maybe it would just be that I'd have to, like, do some conversion thing or something. But definitely any games that were on the internal hard drive of the Xbox One didn't transfer over. Yeah. So if I went and scrolled through my game library now, it might not even be all the same ones. But yeah, I have all sorts of ideas for things that I could do if I just had a bit more time. Like, honestly, okay, I don't know how much of a difference it's supposed to be, but my understanding is I'm probably going to get at least a little bit of a raise here soon. from my work. Basically only enough to keep up with inflation, essentially. But it still might be enough to where I would consider moving into a different, slightly more expensive apartment that's maybe then closer to work, so that I don't have to spend as much time driving back and forth each day. Which would also make an even bigger difference if and when the schedule changes to having 5 8-hour shifts instead of 4 10s, which I hear that change has been proposed. But I mean, it's kind of been on the radar for a while and hasn't happened yet, so I don't know. But definitely if that happened, like, I'd pretty much be saving myself... Well, okay. Let's just say for the sake of easing up the idea and making the math simple, let's just say I moved into the apartment complex that's literally right across the street from my work. I'd essentially be saving myself, like, 2.5 hours worth of driving throughout the week. Anyway, gotta go. Gonna watch a movie tonight. Okay, well, hope you enjoy your movie there, Owl, and have a good evening. And hopefully I'll catch you around some other time. But yeah, I mean, if you don't feel like waiting on the notifications, most of the time my streams are pretty similar times each week, so it's pretty likely that I will be streaming around this same time. Unless and until my work schedule changes, then who knows. But anyway, good night, Owl. Speaking of that possible schedule change, though, I'm thinking if that really does happen, I might, well, it's quite likely I would change my stream schedule a bit. But I actually might instead make it to where my streams are like Wednesday night and Thursday night. Because Friday early afternoon would essentially be off the table then. Like, I would literally have to be at work. Like, if and when it changes, my understanding, at least based on what I've heard, is that it would change essentially to, so yeah, it would be 5 8-hour shifts instead of 4 10-hour shifts. And then basically the 2 hours taken out of each of the 4 days is at the start. So I wouldn't be starting as early. But that still means then I'd be working like 7 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. Which just means straight up mornings and early afternoons are not going to be available for me. But it also means there's a little more time to work with in my evenings, since I don't have to go to sleep so early because I don't have to wake up so early. So that's part of the reason I'm thinking maybe then my live streams would be Wednesday and Thursday evenings. Because, well, at least as things stand, I've got one church group I go to on Monday nights, another church group I go to on Tuesday nights. Friday nights, at least more often than not, you know, I go play Magic the Gathering at a local card shop. But yeah, Wednesday and Thursday nights are kind of open, and I imagine they will continue to be. Unless I also started, like, volunteering at my church's youth group or something. That would then take Wednesday off the table. But I don't think I would do that at least until I would have Tuesday nights available. This whole men's group thing that I'm doing, we're like going through a particular book series that only has a certain, you know, number of books and amount of time to it. So eventually I would then either not be doing anything like that, or I would potentially be encouraged to, like, lead one of those groups myself. And I'm not entirely sure that I want to do that. The leading said group. But then again, I might want to just find a different church group to meet with. I don't know. I'm not even really contemplating that too much until this current group book study thing is done. But yeah, about the only other option that would be available for any live streams were that work schedule change to happen. The only other option would pretty much be sometime on Saturdays. Oh, man. I just looked at the time, and good golly, it seems like it's gone by pretty quickly, actually. I don't know if I want to do this particular move in the game right now. I like to try and wait to use this spell until it seems like I would probably get an extra turn out of it. That one, on the other hand, has no chance of creating an extra turn. Well, now it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to use this because the damage from the spell itself is going to end the battle. Now let's do this one. Well, I'm gonna get a couple more sigils for this event, so really it seems like there's a chance that maybe once I use up all the sigils for this event, that would end up being a decent time to wrap up the live stream. Maybe. I mean, as it stands, I'm like 5 minutes shy of hitting another ad break. Technically been streaming just over 2 hours in total. So, in case anyone has not noticed, the kind of team theme for this week mostly revolves around troops that are considered giants. Like, there's actually like a, I guess you'd call it a race. The game will just say troop type, but it's essentially like a race of... Yeah, troop type giant is literally the requirement for this event. And I think the Underspire, that might have also been the case. Either that or the requirement was Stormheim, which is where a lot of the giant troops, like the kingdom in the game that a lot of the giant troops come from anyway. See, now even if I got these skulls to form in a way that would normally give me an extra turn, I'm not going to get an extra turn from all this because my hero's frozen. And the spell damage on its own is nowhere near enough to end this battle on its own. Okay, now maybe I will consider... Okay. Actually, if I choose blue, I've got pretty good odds. Never mind, it didn't do that. Well... Still got an extra turn from other things that happened, though. So, like, this one converts 8 gems of a chosen color to what are called Uber Doom Skulls. They match up with the regular skulls. And thing is, since it converts 8, if there's any more than 8 of that gem color, then, you know, some of them do not get converted. If you see one color that would potentially cause an extra turn, and there's 8 total gems or less of that color on the board, then it becomes a guaranteed extra turn. However, each gem beyond 8 of that color then slightly decreases the likelihood. Although, in this case, okay, green has 9 gems on the board. 2 of them would cause an extra turn here. We got 3 of them in this line here that give multiple extra turn causing possibilities. I think in that case, it's also guaranteed if I choose green right now. Whether from the vertical or the horizontal. And now the scatter damage alone is enough. Boom. And I have used up all the event sigils. Next ad break is about to hit on Twitch. Probably the next thing I would have done would have just been these daily quest plunder challenge things. But, real quick, let me see. Did I really do 42 battles just in the live stream? I mean, I know I did like 15 in the Underspire. I don't think it was that many just in the live stream, but it was still quite a few. And I gained like 200 and some seals from that. I am noticing my guild has hit the requirement for maximum mythic possibility, though. So that's good to know. I just have not maxed out how many of that resource to potentially get the new mythic troop that I could for this week. Anyway, alright, enough babbling. Ad break is in progress on Twitch, and I'm gonna go ahead and work on getting stuff back over this way to wrap up the stream. Meanwhile, I can look for a raid target on Twitch. Let's see here. Oh, okay. I see somebody's playing that one Pocopia game. I'm a little curious about it. I might raid the person that I see playing that. Yeah. None of the other... you see, okay. There is somebody playing Slay the Spire, too. So, like, TWO, not TOO, but... That's also one of those things where it's like, well, if I plan to eventually play it for myself, how much do I want to see beforehand? I don't know. We did talk about Slay the Spire 2 a little bit, though, so I feel like that's a little bit more relevant of a game to raid into. So, yeah, I think that's where we're going to send it. So, I guess that means that's going to do it for my stream tonight. So, schedule reminders. Assuming nothing major changes. Tomorrow, early afternoon, I will be doing some more Kingdom Hearts 3 DLC boss battles. We'll see if I actually even get through any of them in 2 hours. Because all the ones we've got left are tough. But, so that'll be tomorrow. Next week, we'll wrap up our Bible study in Esther. And then I think, unless something else really seems like you know, unless I get really, really super motivated to do something else instead, I'll be playing some Hades after the Bible study. And then the following Friday is going to be some Borderlands 4. Following Thursday after that is going to be starting the Book of Job and then some other game. So there's the upcoming stream schedule, assuming nothing big changes. All right. With that out of the way, raid is being initiated. Thanks for watching, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the stream. Feel free to, follow on channels and across social media and all that stuff. And I would greatly appreciate watching YouTube content when I'm not live. Because, again, got to hit that watch hour, the watch time benchmark for partial monetization there. But anyway, otherwise, whatever ends up happening, until the next time I see y'all, stay cool, everybody.